welcome to The Positive Side on RVNTV. Great to be here. And I'd like to introduce you to my guest. This is Larry Ambrose. He's from the Downingtown area in the greater Philadelphia suburbs. So, Larry, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you.
It's great to be here.
Larry is going to share with us his personal faith story. He has an amazing journey of triumph after tragedy. So I'm very excited for you to learn more about his life, faith, and mission. So I thought maybe, Larry, you could just start out with, the beginning of your journey.
Yes, and thank you very much for having me on the program. I think I'd like to start the story on August 3rd, 1991 in Sea Isle City, New Jersey. It was my 25th birthday, and it's the day I met Chris Federico. And it became pretty obvious pretty quickly we were going to go ahead and get married, and sure enough, we were engaged within a year and married in September 11th of 1993, and then settled back into Chester County in Pennsylvania in 1998, where we both had been raised. And by that time, the children had started to come along. We were blessed ultimately with 8 children. So Larry, Jordan, Zach, Celeste, Simon, Faith, Carmel, and Solomon. I think that's 8. And we were living the life that we had dreamed about. And our faith was always a strong part of who our family was, our family dynamic. We both were raised Catholic, and I'd always felt like I had a strong Catholic faith. But I learned a lot from Chris, and she was different. I think her sister Peg put it best. She lived in this world, but she was not of this world. And because she just didn't get caught up in the comparisons and the desires and the wants, and she loved God, she loved her family, and that was the most important thing to her. So that really kind of helped our whole family galvanize around our faith and just the way we lived. And we divided our duties up. Her vocation was motherhood, and she did a great job at home, and I was off kind of building my career at GE. I was in sales and marketing, and I was traveling the world, but we made it work, right? And it was the life we had wanted to live and we had dreamed about. And so, fast forward now to the week of May 8th, 2011. It was 2 months after Solomon was born, and so I hadn't really been traveling for work because of that. And we had a nice Mother's Day. I remember it was a beautiful day. We did a lot outside and just did things that she enjoyed. And then the next day, though, was Monday, and we had gone to a viewing for my brother-in-law's close friend's wife, who had passed away at a young age, young mother of cancer. And as you can imagine, it was a very solemn, sad event. And we got home that night, kind of in a moment of reflection. Chris said, if that happened to me, I'm not sure I'd be able to go to heaven. And I kind of looked at her and I'm like, if there's anybody who's ready to go to heaven, it's you, right? And she had been reading books about heaven and was really kind of fixated on that. And but that comment kind of struck me, and little did I know, a few days later, that would have a much different significance. So now it's Wednesday night of that week, and I get a call from a colleague at GE in Charlottesville, which was our headquarters, and he said, hey, we're having this meeting tomorrow. Do you mind coming down for it? I was going to dial in, but it wasn't a big deal for me to get up early, drive the 4 hours down there, have the meeting, and then drive home. And so, that's what I did. And so the next morning I got up, kissed Chris goodbye, and drove down for the meeting. And during the meeting, I missed 2 calls from my sister-in-law. So I had gotten up to go out to call her back, and another call is coming in, and it was the Thorndale Police Department. They basically said, the paramedics are in your house. They're working on your wife. It's serious. You need to get home right away. Where are you? And I'm just stunned, like, what is this? And so 2 of my colleagues, we get in the car, we're driving up, and about halfway up on the ride home, I get a call from my brother-in-law, who had made his way into the emergency room, and he calls me to tell me that Chris had died, and my life just crashed, right? So how could this seemingly healthy, vibrant, full of life person just die, like, out of the blue? And so we got to the hospital, and I had about 10 minutes with her, and then I had to go home to greet my kids off the bus. And what do you tell 8 kids who just lost their mother? So the only thing I could come up with was, who does your mom love more than anybody else in the world? And they said Jesus, and I'll tell you a little bit about Chris, right? That was their answer. But I said, today, Jesus took your mom home, and slowly, the realization set in, and as you can imagine, the worst thing you could ever go through, times 10, right? It was just kind of devastating. And But out of that, was an outpouring of support, right? So family, friends, the neighbors, church community, school community, the athletic teams that my kids played on, the leagues they were in, just people from all walks of life, from everywhere, just coming in, what can we do to help? We ended up having hot meals for a year, laundry service for 2 years. People did shopping for us. They drove my kids to different events that they needed to. Friends of my brother-in-law chipped in and bought us a 12-person passenger van because I didn't have another driver in the house I needed to transport all of us. The school track team organized a run in Chris's memory, and the proceeds went to my children's education. So, and at first I was like, resisting, like, I got this, I can handle this, and very quickly, I realized I needed all the help I could get, right? But I also came to realize, as people would tell me, they're like, when I'm folding your laundry, like, I'm praying for your family, and I'm also praying for my family and the community. And the thing I realized was, as much as we were benefiting from all this, so was everybody else, right? I mean, they were the community, and I think my sister Peg said it maybe best, is like they were all kind of building the kingdom of God, right? And it was all coming together, the body of Christ, to kind of help us and our family, and I think the community also benefited from it. So, when you think about a tragedy and the positive sides of what comes out of that, that certainly was something that our family experienced. A couple things also about this story that I want to share is just some personal kind of signs, right? And that I experienced, especially early on, that helped kind of give me hope and sustain, in a what it was a very difficult time. And the first one was, it was about 2 months after Chris had passed away, and we had spent time at the beach in Seattle, and my 2-year-old daughter had stubbed her toe coming off the beach and ultimately ended up with an infection. So here I am, 2 in the morning, laying on a cot in Chester County Hospital, looking at my daughter with the IV, in her veins. And I was just at my wit's end. And I was like, God, like, what more do you want from me? And, if you're trying to break me, you've done one heck of a job, right? Like, I don't know what else I can give. And, so we ended up getting out next day or two. She ended up being fine. But it was about a week later. And again, this was kind of at my low point. I had gone for a run. I remember it was one of those crisp, kind of fall-like days in the middle of July, and I started to run again. And on this run, I was very kind of focused on Chris and where she was. And, I knew from my faith that she was in heaven, and I believed that. But then I started to think about my role in helping her to get there. And, we'd always said, as husband and wife, our roles are to help to get each other to heaven. So when I was done the run, I was in my neighborhood, and I made a turn into the cul-de-sac that we had. And just as I did that, I felt like this incredible presence over both my right shoulder and my left shoulder. And everything became crystal clear. Like, I could almost see the veins in the leaves and the trees way above. And I was walking, but it almost felt like I was floating. And that lasted, 50, 75 yards. And, I never turned around, but I'm convinced to this day it was like Jesus over my right shoulder, Chris over my left shoulder. And the message that I received was, she is with me now, right? You did your job as her husband and getting her here, and now you have to go raise your family, right? So, that was, it didn't take the pain away, it didn't take the heartbreak, it didn't make raising 8 kids by yourself any easier, but it kind of gave me stable footing and kind of put me at peace. And from there, it was kind of the long, slow climb out of the depths, I felt like truly began. So that was one. And the second one was, as we were coming up to the 1-year anniversary of her death, I didn't want to go in the morning. I didn't want to grieve. I didn't want it to be a negative. So we decided, let's go celebrate her life, right? And so we went and did all the things she loved to do. We had a priest friend come to our house. We had mass at our house, and then we went to the cemetery, and we went to a local restaurant that we love to go to. And then we drove to Seattle. And we went for a ceremonial run on the beach because she loved to run on the beach. That was her favorite thing to do. And then we ended up going to Ocean City, and it was a Saturday in May. We ended up going on rides because they were open, and we had ice cream, and it was a nice day. So we ended up spending the weekend down there. And then we got home Sunday night, and so now it's Monday morning, and early in the morning, I put a load of laundry in the washer and getting ready to get the kids up. And I look out the basement door window, and there's a peacock just staring at me. And I don't know, Ann, about you, but I've never seen a peacock outside of a zoo, right? And it was crazy, right? And the kids were like, they were excited and jumping around. And So that peacock stayed with us for half a day, and at one point it was out on our swing set, just perched and majestically spreading its wings. I actually walked up and got a picture. But I'm texting my sister-in-laws and calling them, and they're Googling it, and my one sister-in-law comes back and says, that's a symbol that peacocks guard the gates of heaven. So on the 1-year anniversary of her death, a peacock shows up, and that's the symbology, at least that I took away from it. So, those are the things that were kind of happening in our lives, and they weren't the only ones, but they were certainly significant ones that kind of helped, again, to sustain us and to kind of help us, carry forward. And it wasn't easy, right? Our lives kind of hit this new normal. I had gone back to GE. They were great. They worked with me on a role that I could do and still kind of be home with and meet the needs of my kids. We had nannies in our house, like 14 hours a day to help me with the kids during the week. And people in the community were still helping us in any way they could. They would come up to us at Mass or in restaurants and say, we're praying for you. Your family's an inspiration to us, and so those are the things that kind of helped, carry us forward in this, and we survived 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time, and what I kind of came to understand is that God gives you these crosses, but He also gives you the grace to carry those crosses, and I think that's also what my kids took from it as well, because in all that, amidst all that tragedy and so forth, and losing their mother, they had a humbleness and a grace about them that I think they've continued to carry forward. And again, when I think about your show and the positive side and what are the things I want to, impart to the audience, right? That's one of them, right? Is this the community that lifted us up, carried us when we really needed it, and then, just our own faith and our beliefs and how that helped kind of keep us going when, the grim times, that we had. And, there was a period one time during, shortly thereafter that we had 4 broken wrists and a broken collarbone in a year, right? So those are some, I could go on and on about stories that would make you laugh and cry at the same time. But again, it's, those are the things that kind of helped, sustain us and get us through all those. So.
Wow. I want to thank you really from my heart for sharing. What a story. And, I know that our viewers are being blessed by hearing it, that the tragedy that God sustained you all during that time. So thank you so much, Larry.
You're welcome.
We do have to take a break. So just give us a few minutes and we'll be right back here on the Positive Side on RVNTV.
They've simply experienced more life. If they were human, we would call them wise. They would be the ones with tales to tell and stories to write, the ones dealt a bad hand who responded with courage. Do not pity a shelter dog. Adopt one.
Say we've got grit, and we'll take it as a compliment. Because it's our uncommon drive, our spark within, that brings us together and sets us apart. We are temple made. And when others take shortcuts, when others take breaks, when others take the easy way, we take charge.
Add us on social media to watch bloopers, behind-the-scenes footage, previews, and more.
Hello, welcome back to the Positive Side on RVNTV. Ann DeSantis here with Larry Ambrose. He was sharing his personal faith story during the first half. He's a father of 8 children, and he told us the story of the passing of his wife, Chris, in 2011, and then the years that followed that, but mostly for you to know how God carried him through that time. And I'm very grateful that you shared that story, that God cared for both you and your family during difficult and
Yes.
tragic times, but has brought you here today
Yep.
to show you that faith makes all the difference.
It does.
So, would you pick up where you left
Sure.
off?
So let me fast forward now to 2017, and so the wheels had started to come off the track, at least for me, right? And the company I was with, we were building a software business, and the headquarters was no longer Charlottesville, Virginia for me. It was now California. So I was traveling out a lot more to California. My responsibilities had expanded. We were acquiring companies, so I was traveling to those companies to integrate the specific departments into the area of responsibility that I had, and it was crazy, right? And everybody, and we were all kind of running around doing crazy things. And even though I had the nannies still, supporting me, and even though we're still getting support in the community that we needed, I was just running all over the place, right? Just even when I was home, I was trying to be at the different events and just kind of running a little bit ragged. And I had also now gone on 6 years of just 24/7 processing. My brain just constantly just check, things I had to get done. And, to the point where I'd wake up at 2 in the morning and be like, I forgot to do this for Simon for his class or for his school, or, I needed to do this at work. And so I, consequently ended up just waking up at times at 2, started to work till 4 and then try to get some more sleep. And, when you do that over a sustained period of time, your body just starts to break down. And ultimately, I hit a mental and a physical wall. And I really understood that burnout is real, and I hit it. And fortunately, I have a very good counselor and a very good doctor who happen to be uncle and nephew to each other. And they had been with me for those 6 years and through all the roller coasters I had gone through. And so they were pretty in tune to when I needed more attention than less attention. And they came to me and pretty emphatically said, you need to take a step back. You need to take a leave of absence, and you need to do it now, or you're going to crash, and you're going to crash hard. And so I listened, right? And because I certainly didn't want that, and where would we end up if that happened? So, I went to GE, and again, they were great. They understood it. So I took a leave of absence. This was May of 2017. With every intention of going back within a month or two, right? Just to kind of clear my head, and because I love what I did and it's what I knew, right? So, but as the summer went on and, I started to get healthy again, and I started to get some clarity, I started to think differently about it. And, I was back to running, and the runs were great, very therapeutic. And on those runs, I had many long conversations with God, like, God, what do you want me to do, right? Like, how can I take care of my kids? How can I continue to have this career? How do I figure this all out? Help me with this. And, at the time I had started to write things down. I started a journal. And I think, in another gift from God, it turned out to be ended up writing my life mission statement. And I basically reprioritized my life and around 5 key things. And the first was, live in communion with God. And I started to really get fixated on the Holy Spirit dwelling inside of you. And if you truly believe that, how could you not live a joyous life? And so the joyful life kind of became like my mission. That is what I was striving to achieve. The next one was my health, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. If I had to be healthy in order to be able to kind of raise my kids and be there when they needed me. So that became a huge priority. The third one was, stay connected to my children, right? Nurture them, love them, be present with them, right? Raising my kids became or was my life's ministry, and it was going to last into eternity. So I started to make decisions with that time frame in mind because I never had done that. The fourth one was, use the platform that God has given you. Not that I had wanted or would wish on anybody, but He did give me a platform. And how could I use this platform to bring people closer to Him? And then the last one was, find true love again, right? Because I really wanted that, right? So, as I made these priorities and kind of this mission statement, I was like, how can I rationalize this? Do I go back to work? Do I work the next 9 years? And I could retire when I'm 60. I could have this great retirement. I could travel the world. I could have these nice fancy toys. But what would I be giving up, right? Would I give up 9 more years of my kids' formidable growth and, and all those experiences, and was I willing to do it? So I made the decision in September of, 2017 that the one thing I could not buy was time, right? And so I could never buy that time with my children. So I made the decision to walk away from, an executive career that I loved, with a company that I loved, with a lucrative, salary, to stay at home full time and raise my kids. And I didn't have all the answers on how I was going to do it, particularly financially. But I just doubled down on my faith, and I said, I'm going to trust in God's plan, right? And He will provide. And, as I sit here 2.5 years later, I can tell you without a doubt it was the best decision I ever made. I'm living that joyful life, right? I get up in the morning, I get my kids off to school, I'm there when they get home. I make dinner for them, and on most nights we eat together as a family, which they love. I get to most of their events, and if I could figure out how to bilocate and trilocate, I could get to all their events, right? And I've coached some of their teams, which I was never able to do. And a great example was last night. 4 years ago, my son, as in his last game as a senior and playing basketball in high school, I was on a business trip in California. I had to miss his last game, and it was such an empty feeling. And last night, when he walked off the court for the last time as a college senior, I was there, right, as I had been for most of his games. And that was hugely important to him. And those are the things that I now get to experience because of this. And again, just learning to kind of live in the moment and appreciate and enjoy, everything that my kids get to experience, and kind of be there with them and stay connected to them. But I'll also say, this life is not easy, right? It's a cross of a different kind. It used to be, I think about I think about what I used to go through, and, it used to be get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, drive to the airport, fly off to close the deal or integrate that company, and there was a certain thrill or, adrenaline rush you got from that. And, now that's more like I get up, I do 3 loads of laundry, right? I go shopping, I have to cook for an army, a small army, right? And so, you have to kind of redefine what is success. But what I've discovered is that there is nobleness, right, in the simplicity, right? There is nobleness in the mundane, right? And I think, there are so many rewards that I get out of that I never would have gotten if I had been off traveling on a business trip and so forth. And, I think when I think about, how God has kind of helped me get through and make these decisions, the first step was trusting in Him and taking that first step out the door, and that was a big step, right? But, as I've journaled over the last couple of years, and I've gone back and read to kind of prepare for this, there is a definite tension, right? Because one foot is still back in this world, and this world tells you, strive, achieve, go get this, buy that, do this, and it's a struggle. It's a constant struggle, and I think, that movement from one to the other, to take that last foot out the door, is kind of, and I've read this, is kind of where true kind of spiritual growth and transformation takes place. And I think, God kind of brings you through at a pace that, He has for you, even though it may not be fast enough, you want it to be quicker and so forth. But, looking back, it's trusting in Him and going through that process that He gives you these blessings. And, I mentioned to you one of my goals or my new priorities was to fall in love again, right? Find true love again. And sure enough, I had tried dating on and off, over the past number of years, and just had never met somebody that I connected with. And, looking back, I realized that, I wasn't ready, right? So God had kind of been positioning me all along. And when I was ready, so last June, mid-June, I was ready, and I met Jen, your friend Jennifer. And, we had our first date in Valley Forge Park, and I remember it was a picnic dinner, and we sat there and we talked for hours. It was pitch black, I could have stayed there all night and talked, because we connected on so many different levels: our faith, what we value in life, our thoughts around our kids, our experience, and so forth. And I left there thinking, thank you, God. Like, this was one of the things I'd pray for, and He had blessed me with. And I knew quickly, right, and that the relationship evolved. And 2 days after that first date, she sends me this book, A Father Who Keeps His Promise, and it connected back to some of the things we had talked about. But it just spoke volumes to me about the type of person she was. The relationship grew quickly, and here we are 8 months later, and she'll tell you it's a Hallmark kind of type of story. But we're engaged to be married this summer, and we're working to bringing together our families, right? So we're adding Kevin and Mercedes to my 8, and we're gonna have a family of 10, and I'm just so excited, right, for us, for our future, and kind of build our family together now. I'm so excited for, this platform that he has given me, and, who knows, maybe this is the start of what God wants me to go do over the next 20, 30 years or whatever. But, it's just, again, kind of coming through all those experiences and just trusting in him, and ultimately ending up living that joyous life that I so desired and so wanted. So, that's the thing I think I want everybody to kind of take away from this, is just, however it works for you, but for me, it's my faith, right? It's really believing that God has a plan, following it, and just trusting in it. And out of that, out of tragedy comes blessings and comes rewards and so forth that, that he will give to you by living that way.
Thank you. Oh, wow. What a story. I'm so blessed to hear the whole story, and I know that my viewers are too. And thankful to you, Larry, for being a guest here. And I also want to just make a shout out to my friend, Jen Ivanovsky, and congratulate the both of you for the upcoming wedding, when will that be?
July 31st. Just got booked the other day.
2020.
Yes,
So,
2020.
now, I can't believe it, but we do have to end already.
Okay.
We're finished the show almost. So, Larry, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
joining me on the positive side on RVNTV. For Larry, Ambrose, and myself, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.